Hi guys, welcome back aboard our 44-foot hurricane damaged DIY catamaran project boat. The astute viewer will note that I've removed one of our trampolines here. I've done that so we can bring it over to the manufacturer, which is located about 2 hours from here, to have them tell us if it's still safe for us to use. I am still a little bit sore from my fall last week, but this week I also hope to measure for all the through hulls we'll need for the catamaran and hopefully do a compression test on our 2 Yanmar diesel engines. Why exactly those 2 small side projects? Well, because if we want to reach our summer 2025 goal of having the boat be ready to move, well, then we will need a watertight hull that includes through hulls, and we'll also need a working pair of engines. But let's start with the nets, or the trampolines. This is the one I took off the boat. These were made by Sunrise Yacht Products over in St. Pete. I first met the guys from Sunrise at the boat show, and they seemed like really cool people. I know this might sound a little bit odd, but I'm really excited about this trampoline trip here, because whenever you meet people that are really passionate about what they do, they will have something interesting to tell you. It doesn't matter if they are an astronaut or an accountant. If they're passionate about what they do, they will have something to share. The next morning I got up at 5 o'clock and started the drive from Port Canaveral to St. Petersburg. I figured out that I can use CarPlay and my iPhone to ask Siri questions for ChatGPT while I'm driving. That's been a great source of entertainment while stuck in traffic. Ask ChatGPT if congestion is usually bad on Interstate 4 in Florida.
A study by INRIX found that the stretch from the Beachline Expressway to the 429 interchange is the most congested in the U.S.
All good comes to he who waits patiently stuck in traffic. Eventually, the Spiffymobile made it all the way to Sunrise HQ, where I got a warm welcome from Matt and Gabe.
This room is our nerve center. This is where most nets are going to start their fabrication and finish their fabrication. Your typical net is going to start in a raw material of some sort. This particular one is 3/8 offshore. It'll get cut to initial size and then go to our coating department over there, which you'll see in just a minute. After that, it comes back, gets a second final cut to size, and gets a reinforcement put on like you're seeing over here. It then goes and gets the first set of stitching, then it gets a final cover and final stitching, and finally it comes to our grommeting and QC station. Alright, so this is our coating department. This is where we put the coating on the nets to give them their long UV durability. We also do our Dynamicore rope perimeters on this side. We've got a jig stretched up right now. And we do our Dynamicore on our webbing department as well, so you'll see that in a minute.
When we got into the next room, Matt pointed out this contraption. This takes the prize as the coolest bit of backyard engineering I have seen in a very long time. This machine welds together 2 pieces of nylon webbing. If Ava and I ever end up living in a house again, then I want this as an art piece.
Alright, so this is our webbing department. We're making a really heavy-duty net here. This is a 3-ply webbing net. This is going to go on a commercial day charter, so really durable material. We do our sewing over on this side, and we also do some of our rope perimeter nets on this side as well. This is kind of our multi-purpose. If we have a really large format net, like for a big racing tri like a Mod 70, we'll lay it out on this floor. We've got jig spacing set up all over so we can make a really tight jig for racing nets.
One of the main reasons I wanted to come here was to have Matt take a look at our existing trampolines to see if we're still good to use them for the next 5 years.
Well, let's take a look here. So this is a square hole mesh material. Mm-hmm. This is going to have a polyester scrim with a heavy vinyl coating on it. So we're going to be looking at multiple things on this net. We'll start with the main portion of the net, the material here. Obviously it's dirty. We've cleaned it here and it cleans up nicely. That's not an issue, it's just an aesthetic thing. Mm-hmm. The other thing we really want to look at on this particular type of material is to see how worn it is. So a heavily worn square hole mesh material, you're going to see the bare fibers worn into, particularly where they protrude on the top. And I'm not seeing that here. This has some wear. I can see some areas where it's just slightly worn into the bare polyester. I think maybe here.
What would that look like? It's not this, right?
That looks like it is slightly, but I've seen it So I'm just comparing to what I've seen historically, and I've seen a lot more wear on a fully functional net.
Yeah.
So I would have no issue being on this. The other thing you're going to want to check, and this is more long-term UV damage, is the flexibility. So if this was crunchy when I folded it, if any of these fibers were cracking, you could feel that. Yeah. That's a sign that you really need to be looking to replace it. I'm not feeling it. My guess is that we're looking at something like a 7-year-old, 8-year-old net here, and I would expect this to be good for another 3 to 5, 3 to 7 years. So somewhere in there, depends on where it's being used and how much UV it's exposed to. But I don't see any concerns here. Most nets with a sewn perimeter, the first area that's going to fail is going to be the thread in the border. But since we made these, it's essentially a UV inert PTFE thread. So I'm not seeing any concerns here. I mean, 1 or 2 spots where there's a stitch out over the life of a net, that's to be expected. The stitching here is only half of the structural stitching on this net. There's a whole nother set of stitching like this underneath that's fully protected by this border. So I see no structural stitching issues. Obviously, grommets, these do have a strange dark patina, which I can't fully explain. It's normally a bit more of a greenish patina, but I don't see any damage to the grommets themselves. I would recommend lacing these just with Dyneema, particularly as these get a little older. There's a very slight bit of roughness to this, and Dyneema is going to both tension it better, and it's going to have better abrasion resistance.
Okay.
So I know I mentioned cleaning that net with acetone, but I do want to point out that is not for all of our nets. So this is a 3/8 offshore. This has our proprietary coating on it. You do not want to clean this particular coating with acetone. So you use something like a Dawn dish soap and a soft bristle brush should you need to clean this net. Of course, if you get a black net, you basically never need to clean it because it always looks good.
Matt grabbed a few measurements off of our old net to be able to make the new lacing strip. Of course, no tour would be complete without a quick bit of computer magic.
All right, so what we have here is just one of our boat opening and net drawings for the Antares 44. And the Antares is a bit unique. Well, all boats made before, say, 2015 tend to be a bit unique. So we do drawing checks for all of these because, as you'll see in a second, I'm going to pull up all the different layers we have, and you can see all the variation. So this is why we do drawing checks on this particular boat, because all of these are potential dimensions of your boat until we do that drawing check.
I had a ton of fun hanging out with Matt and Gabe, but before heading home, I had to fulfill my other reason for driving to St. Pete. I made a quick pit stop at the yacht rigger to pick up some new engine parts and 2 very spiffy inverter chargers. It is awesome that we don't need to get new nets right now. For one, we have plenty of other projects to spend money on right now, but also this means that once the refit is done, then we'll get brand new spiffy nets and be ready to do some cruising. I was pretty ruthless with the editing on the footage I got from Sunrise, but in case you want more information, Matt has a white paper on their website. It's pretty interesting, and I think it's well worth checking it out. I'll include a link for that down in the description. Let's put the net off to the side here, and let's get started on our little engine project. I would like to do a compression test on each of the engines. The only slight challenge is I don't know if we have the right adapter. We may very well end up in a situation where we're going to have to see if we can cobble something together with one of the old injectors and one of these guys, but let's cross that bridge when we get to it. On the topic of the engines, so far we have spent about $7,500 on engine parts. The last time I mentioned the cost of the parts, there were a couple of people that were quick to jump on Google and arrived at the conclusion that you could get a new Yanmar 3YM30 for like $3,500. I really wish that was the case. Last I heard, a brand new 3YM30 with a gearbox was just shy of $20,000. So even though $7,500 is a lot of money, I still think we're doing fairly well trying to keep this somewhat affordable. Also keep in mind that about $2,000 out of the $7,500 we've spent have been for stuff like new engine control panels and wiring harnesses. Stuff that I don't believe is included in the price I heard for a new engine. A few weeks back, with the help of Jeff and Todd, we got the engines up and running and ran them long enough to see that the thermostat's open, that everything worked the way it was supposed to. Now, one engine seemed to be working perfectly, the other ran a little bit rough. So I have ordered a new set of injectors. Before anybody mentions it, I am well aware that you can get these serviced. The plan is to install the new ones and then have the old ones serviced and then keep them as spares. There were several of you that recommended we do a compression test on both of the engines to get a baseline for both of them, but also to get another clue in the puzzle of why the one that's running a little rough is doing that. I did try and do a little bit of research online to see if I could figure out what thread is on the injector so I would know what kit to buy for doing the compression test. But yeah, I did not have any luck. So I picked this one up and we'll just have to see if we have something that looks like it'll work. We won't know until we know, but this guy right here looks like it might work. If that is indeed the case, then the thread here on the injector will be an M24 with a 2mm pitch. The two Darling engines are shoved way in the back of the workshop, but if we're successful with the new injectors, then we should be able to move the engines into the boat in the next few weeks. To get access to the injectors, I had to remove the air filter. Fortunately, everything came apart super easy, although I have added something akin to a flare nut wrench to my mental wish list. With the return removed, the injectors were right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Of course, you can't tell if there's any kind of issue with the injectors by just looking at them, but it'll be fun to see if I can get these serviced and keep them as spare parts. It was time for Harbor Freight's finest compression test kit to spring into action, and wouldn't you know it, there was an adapter that fit. With the gauge hooked up, all that was left to do was to hit the start button and cross my fingers. That looks like around 470 psi to me on the first cylinder. I moved the adapter to the next cylinder and got around 460. So far, so good. The third time is the charm. And wouldn't you know it, we got a very respectable 440 psi. We now have our compression test data. I am so freaking excited, guys. I've got the measurements on the board here. One cylinder came in at 470 psi, one at 460, and one at 440. That's roughly a 7% difference. I knocked on the door of my emotional support diesel mechanic, Jeff, and he said, generally speaking, a difference between the cylinders of 10%, even 10 to 15% maybe, is considered acceptable. So we're definitely within that range. A quick bit of Googling said that Yanmar thinks the compression should be between 390 to 470 psi. So yeah, we are looking really good. That means that there's a 99.999% chance that the little bit of roughness we heard when that engine was running a few weeks ago was because of a bad injector. So let's swap out the injectors and cross our fingers. Installing the new injector assemblies was super easy and simply just the reverse of removing them. Fortunately, the human torque wrench that is Jeff swung by to see how I was doing. Click. The engine sounds so much better. With the good compression test and the much better sound, I think it's fair to say we have two working engines. That'll work. Yep. For the sake of paranoia, we decided to run the second engine one more time too, and it sounded just as good as it did a few weeks back. This has been a day of great relief, right? Because we did take a little bit of a gamble on those engines. There was no guarantee that they were gonna work out, and $7,000 or over $7,000 is a lot of money to put into something that you're not entirely sure will work out. So yeah, color me relieved. In case you need to do a compression test on your Yanmar 3YM30, then I can indeed verify that the M24 with a 2mm pitch is the adapter you need. The kit I've got here is the Master Diesel compression test kit from Harbor Freight, but now that we know what adapter to use, you can probably find a compression tester way cheaper. I just chose this kit because it had a huge amount of adapters. If one of you guys can recommend a place to get the old injectors checked and revived, then please go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'm going to head home and celebrate with a nice dinner, and then tomorrow, well, we should probably get all of the last bits of stuff and wiring harnesses bolted onto both of the engines so they're completely ready to go back into the boat. The next morning I returned with my new best friend in hand. I am well aware he is yellow and not blue, but sadly the blue folks don't make every type of tool or accessory you need, and certain tools are better in yellow. I am a fan of quality tools, not a color. With the small box of parts retrieved, I jumped right in and started with the wiring harness on the second engine. The engine frames Klaus and I built a few weeks back are so incredibly useful. If I ever need to pull these engines, I will be building a set of frames again. This time around, I knew to order 2 of the little grommets for the bracket that holds the 3 relays. Before connecting the wiring harness to the relays, I swapped out the old oil switch. I don't know if the old one still works, but it looks super crusty, and it would be nice to have a trustworthy oil pressure switch. With all of the wiring connections made, next on the chopping board was this crusty high throttle adjustment. I ordered 2 sets of these because it's missing from the other engine. I'm sure we could reuse this one, but it looks super crusty. And of course the threaded part snapped during removal, so perhaps it was a good idea to replace it. Either way, we now have a nice smooth upper throttle adjustment doohickey. I repeated that process for the second engine, and this is how they work. There's an adjustment for the low idle and for the full throttle. We have busted coolant temperature switches on both of the engines. That is a must-have, so let's replace those. To do that, we need to drain the coolant. Now, there are many things I like about the design of these Yanmar engines, and the easy coolant draining is one of those. Just don't drink the forbidden Kool-Aid. With the new switch installed, I poured the delicious looking coolant back in, and again in best catamaran fashion, repeated the process a second time. The engines are looking a little naked and are flaunting us with their exposed flywheels. Besides covering up for modesty, we do also need some way of connecting to the shafts, so let's dry fit the transmissions. On the second engine, I am missing some of the bolts to secure the dampener plate, but other than that, everything looks okay. Those are 2 very nice looking engines, if I do say so myself. We are 99% of the way there. We are so close to being able to stuff them back in the boat. I know we've been there before, but I have now placed the order for what should be the last order of spare parts for the engines. It's going to be one of those throttle control arms, a bunch of bolts, and other few minor things. So hopefully that's going to be the last order for the engines themselves. I should get those parts sometime next week. Once I have those parts, then we can get the engine control panels hooked up and do like an end-to-end test to make sure that we can start and stop from the control panels and that the alternator is working, all that kind of stuff. If that works, then I want to do a quick oil change while the engines are warm, and also maybe do a couple of paint touch-ups. But after that, we should be ready to install them in the boat. Being able to start and stop the engines is going to be very exciting, but of course we'll also need to be able to control the transmission and the throttle. As you can see, the helm area here was rebuilt by Brian, and there's absolutely nothing there right now. Down here in the starboard port aft cabin, we've got the remnants of the old engine controls. Probably the nicest thing we can say about the old controls is the fact that the cables are still attached. Usually the numbers are on here for the length and stuff. But yeah, this thing is absolutely toast. Just for the fun of it, I looked online to see how much Yanmar wants for one of those dual engine control doodads, and it looked like it was around $1,500, which to me seems a wee bit excessive. I know the one we have aboard Athena, it's a single one, but it's a third-party one, and it was, I think it was $300, something like that, which seems a lot more reasonable. But if you guys have a recommendation for a good quality third-party version of the engine control mechanism doodad, then please go ahead and leave a comment down below. Some of the old exhaust system is still in place. We should be getting the new diesel tanks from the fabricator anytime now. And yeah, we are very, very close to having working engines. Our anchoring setup is also 99% there. We just need chain and an anchor. In terms of watertight hulls, I didn't get around to measuring for new through holes this week because I still need to solve the puzzle of what all the old holes did. Like, for instance, we have one depth sensor here and there are two more over on the other hull. I mean, I would think one would be enough. So just to sum up, to reach our summer 2025 goal, all we need to do is to pick up an anchor and a bit of chain for the anchoring setup, then that's done. For the watertight hulls, we just need to order a few through holes and then patch a bunch of holes. So that's gonna be a fun video, then that'll be done. The new steering has been ordered and it should get here in about 10 weeks. The working engines, well, you know, they're almost there. We're getting there. Just as with Athena, this is not a sprint, it is a marathon, and slow and steady wins that race. And on that positive note, I'll end this week's video here. I hope to see all of you guys back here aboard the catamaran next week for yet more glorious DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!